Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today, I want to do something a little bit different for you all. I am going to show you guys an interview that I had with one of the cold callers that is currently on my team. She's actually been with me for about 7 months, and she is incredible. Her name is Geraldine, and I actually got her from Rocket Station. They do an excellent job with sourcing virtual assistants. I highly recommend them, and my company is pretty much built on Rocket Station cold callers and lead managers. So if you are looking for virtual assistants, highly suggest reaching out to them. I'll put the contact information for my representative, Greg, in the description so you can speak with them if you want to sign up. Let me go over some of the hiring tips that I would suggest if you were going to hire a cold caller. So first off, guys, hiring the right virtual assistant for your company, it's a learned skill. So what I did whenever I hired my first virtual assistants many years ago is I would ask very basic questions and not really even get to the root of if they were a good fit. And there are certain questions you can ask to determine this. So being able to quickly identify whether that individual is a good fit for your business or not is really important. These interviews shouldn't last any more than 15 minutes. Most of mine last around 7 to 10 minutes. So I take a conversational approach, and when I show you guys this video, you'll see what I mean. I don't try to overly intimidate the virtual assistants. I want them to be relaxed. Now, some of them are going to have nerves and jitters. I don't factor that into whether or not I'm going to hire them. I've had virtual assistants that aced the interview, and I've hired them and they didn't perform well. I've also had other virtual assistants that sounded very shaky when talking to me, but when they got on board in my company, they crushed it. So please keep that in mind. One thing I am looking for, though, is if they can respond back to my questions I ask them in a very articulate fashion. So that's why we don't ask basic questions. So we don't ask questions like, what is your greatest strength? Or go off topic on some random question or topic that doesn't even make sense, right? We want to keep it centered around what you want them to do in your company. So a lot of the questions I'll ask in my interviews are centered around their previous work experience. I ask them questions that are very specific and they can't formulate a response beforehand. I've actually had virtual assistants that I interviewed, and when I would ask them certain questions, they would respond back very quickly. Why? Because those questions were common and they were scripted. I want my virtual assistants to truly understand what I'm saying, because if I have a cold caller or a lead manager, when they talk to a seller, they're not going to have a scripted response. The seller is just going to say whatever they want. And those phone calls with the sellers can take many different directions. So it's very important that your virtual assistants are able to understand English really well. And when you guys see this interview here, you'll understand I don't mess around when it comes to English, especially with Filipinos. I think they get a bad rap, and rightfully so. You know, there's a lot out there that have very thick accents, and I think that comes across negative to our sellers. So if I have a cold caller or lead manager I'm looking to hire, I want their accent not to be that thick, and I want them to understand English. Now, Geraldine, she was interviewing for the cold calling position, but I had intentions of actually promoting her and a couple of other cold callers I hired with Rocket Station at the time to lead managers. So I was looking for somebody that actually understood the English language really well and sounded great on the phone. Now, with a lot of my other just basic cold callers that call my huge list of like 100,000 sellers, I'm fine with their accents not being that great. They're just looking to generate the leads for me. But when it actually comes to talking to the sellers, and I was hiring Geraldine for a very specific cold calling list, and I wanted her to really understand these seller situations because they were dealing with difficult situations. So it was a very motivated seller list, and she needed to sound great on the phone, which she does. So know the specific task that your virtual assistants should be doing to ensure that when you hire them on or whenever you're interviewing them, that you get an indication that their previous skill sets match your job description. So what do I mean? We don't want somebody with a computer science background getting on our team if we want them to cold call. That doesn't really make sense. They're qualified, they're great, they probably are an exceptional worker. However, for this position, that's not a good fit. For instance, even today, I had interviews with two individuals from Rocket Station, and both of them had stellar backgrounds. However, one had a very technical background. They were very articulate, their English sounded great, but all of their skills and previous work experience was centered around IT and tech. And I needed them as a lead manager. They needed to talk on the phone. I was not about to hire this individual. Why? Not because they're untrainable, but why even start there? Why start at zero when you could start at 50% with somebody who has those skill sets previously? And the only thing you have to do is just train them on your company's specific processes. You want people that are qualified, but you want the right qualified person. And I'll go ahead and just tell you guys, I like hiring virtual assistants that are either doing cold calling for me or lead management that were in customer service before. Because if you could deal with irate customers from AT&T, Sprint, Comcast, wherever these virtual assistants may have worked previously, you can deal with sellers easily because there's not that many objections that you have to handle. And really, the number of irate sellers you deal with on a daily basis are probably way less than what they usually deal with if they were at a normal, typical customer service industry. So if I see a virtual assistant that had 5 years of customer service experience and they had a good track record with that particular company, and I see that they moved up in the ranks to become a supervisor, that's somebody I want on my team. And I'm going to automatically put them over somebody else that may not have that particular training or background. So as I just indicated, you want to be hiring somebody that has customer service background. That's just from my experience with hiring dozens and dozens of cold callers over the years. So let's go ahead and jump into the interview, guys. There, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Nervous and excited, to be
Oh, you
honest. Yeah.
shouldn't be nervous. More excitement than nervousness. I
Yeah.
will not
Leaning
let your head
towards
off.
excitement. Yeah.
Yeah. I ask like probing questions, but it's only to get to know you a little bit more. So this is a little conversation. Won't be too long because I have a lot of these to get through. So we'll
Yeah.
jump right through it. I'm
Sure
looking
thing.
at your resume here, and you've been with Rocket Station from this month. So I want to talk a little bit about your previous work experience.
Sure.
Looks like you've been. So what's your most previous longest tenured job? Would you say e-performance
Yeah.
contact center?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So let's talk about that a little bit. What do your job like details and roles entail and in that position?
Sure. For ePerformax and actually all throughout my contact center industry, I support a telecommunications company, which is Sprint. That's specifically for ePerformax. And what that involves basically is me supporting customers whenever they have inquiries with their account,
Mhm.
billing, general inquiries. There's some troubleshooting involved. There are times where I would actually support a customer beyond the initial call. So I would call them back for any additional assistance. And that's
Mm.
basically the gist of what I did specifically with Sprint. And also similar to the rest of my work experience with other companies like Telstra, which is based in Australia, and also AT&T.
Okay. So were you more like inbound or outbound whenever you were going into call?
Mostly inbound. For outbound experience, I mostly had that with Telstra when I
Mhm.
was part with their collections department, and then when I was also part with their service to sales
Oh man,
department. Yeah.
collections. I bet that was fun.
Oh yeah, yeah. We handled both residential and business, so there was a
Yeah.
lot of calls. So I'm used to like taking like 200 plus calls, maybe even more in a day
Yeah.
when I was with collections.
Yeah. So based on, I guess, your performance with e-performance, like how did you like measure whether or not you were successful in the day? What metrics were you held to
Yeah.
in that?
Well, for that, definitely we have customer surveys. So that's measured on a daily to weekly to monthly
Hmm.
basis. And I personally would always keep an eye on my surveys because
Hmm.
Sprint was pretty big on customer satisfaction.
Yeah.
And then we'd also get like maybe quarterly intervals in a day of
Hmm.
our current metrics. So like how long is your average call time with your customers?
Mm.
What's your survey score?
Hmm.
Those kinds of things. How are you using your tools? We had the tracker for that. So that's how
What
I
was the
would.
most? I'm sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go.
Go ahead.
No, no, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that that's basically how I would keep track of my performance, and our support always let us know, like, hey, this is where you're at. This is where what we need to work on.
That's interesting. So seems like you hold yourself to a high like standard as well, because you were proactive about, hey, I want to make sure my quality score is good. So
Yeah.
that's very good to hear. That's very good to hear. Let me look at your resume here again. So are you familiar with I guess real estate cold calling at all?
Not so much. I've learned a
Mhm.
lot during our training. I didn't actually realize that real estate like does lead generation and does cold
Yeah.
calling. So I was
Mhm.
surprised, but also kind of happy because it was something that I was familiar with, and that was something that I'm sure if I had that task, I could do, or I could
Mhm.
transition to it as smoothly as I can.
Yeah, well, it seems like you have a lot of experience with interacting with people. Doing inbound versus outbound, there's really, no difference, especially when you're
Yeah.
doing collections. I would say those may be the type of calls that you may be taking are those types of people. I don't do
Mm,
collections, but when you're doing cold calling,
yeah.
you might catch people at a bad time. So it's like we're looking for that needle in the haystack. So you have to have thick skin, which
Yeah.
I mean, obviously you were in this industry for a while, so you know that. I guess the other thing too is just would you consider yourself like a multitasker? Are you more introverted, extroverted? Like, where are you on those spectrums?
I do, work on multitasking because I know in my industry that's important.
Mm-hmm.
As far as being introverted or extroverted, the default setting for me is
Mm-hmm.
introverted.
Yeah.
But with the career that I've had, I've learned to really also like bring in some extrovertedness when I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing my job, because I can't just be like my normal self. I'm interacting with different people. So you
Yeah.
gotta adapt, how you are with the person that you're talking to so that it's a smoother communication.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's sort of like feeling the room. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of cold callers that I've listened to when I listen to their calls, they can't read the seller. Like, obviously, if
Oh,
somebody
yeah.
picks up the phone, they're like, "Hello," and
Yeah.
you can't just like go into your script. So the biggest thing is being able to adapt. Like those are people
Yes.
I'm looking for. People that critically think, people that can adapt, and people that can address situations, not just like read off a script. Because we want to
Mm-hmm.
have a conversation with these people. We want to connect with them. A lot of these people, they may be going through something very tough in their life, and yes,
Yeah.
their house may be the last thing that they have that they need to sell and get a good price for in order to move forward. So we need to make sure we listen to them, hear them out, not be on the call for too long, but at the same time, roll with the punches like you were saying. So I guess my last question is there a particular like situation that you've had where it was just like sore stressful and you had to like be the point man for putting that fire out? Is there like anything you think about in particular where it was like, man, that was hellacious. I never want to deal with that again, but you made it through. Can you think of anything like that?
Yeah, the thing that popped into my mind was when I had the chance to be a trainer in one of the companies that I worked with. So it was the first time they gave me a class. Like there were like
Mm.
20 people involved.
Oh, wow.
And at the same time, there was another project going on that I was previously assigned to. And
Mm-hmm.
there was, I believe it was another module that we created for training in sales. And
Mm-hmm.
the person that I had sort of supposedly should be handling the module, since I was taking on a class, wasn't available at that day. She was out sick,
Mm-hmm. Oh,
so I
no.
kind of had to do two things at the same time. And the module was due that day,
Yeah.
so I had to really put in my multitasking hat and just
Yeah.
buckle up and just like do the work,
Mm-hmm.
and just power through, really, because at the end of the day, I got to make sure I do the job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. So definitely some perseverance there. I like hearing that. I appreciate you sharing that. So there you have it, guys. Geraldine has been great in my company, and looking back on that video, I get so happy thinking about it because I made the right hire. And that didn't happen by accident. It happened after making a lot of bad hires over my years to actually get to the point where I'm able to ask the right questions to get the right virtual assistant on board. So lastly, guys, I want to share with you a lead generation workshop that I put together. And this workshop, it's 2 hours long. It was way too long to put on YouTube. So I wanted to put it on my website so you guys can watch. This goes through my exact 4-step process that I use to generate hundreds of seller leads every month. So if you go through this process, you'll see how to generate your first 100 seller leads in a month of marketing. And Geraldine is actually an individual that fits inside of my process. She's doing lead management now, but initially she did cold calling. So I discuss how she fits into all of that in this workshop, how you can leverage virtual assistants, and how you can basically go into any virtual market and generate 100 qualified seller leads very quickly. It was great sharing this with you guys today. I hope you take something from it, and I will see you guys in the next video. Have a fantastic day.